Our next presenter's title is Returning the Favor, the Family's Responsibility to Care for Their Elderly. Please welcome Marineh Allen.
I was 6 years old. I peered out from the alcove hidden between the plush leather couches of my grandparents' apartment and stifled my giggles, while my grandfather pretended that he had no idea where I was. The enticing aroma of macaroni musso wafted from the kitchen as my grandmother called us to dinner. Later, as my grandfather dozed off on the couch, my grandmother entered the world of her soap operas. I would leave with my stomach full and my cheeks burning with affectionate pinches. Gradually, my grandfather began to forget words or where he was. I was so convinced that nothing had changed since I continued to go to my grandparents' apartment every day after school, until abruptly we stopped. From that time on, my grandfather was very different. An acclaimed poet, he could write in Armenian with his right hand, left to right, while simultaneously translating those lines into Persian with his left hand, writing right to left, both lines rhyming in meter. As his condition worsened, it grew too difficult for my grandma to care for my grandpa on her own. But what other options were there? Should he remain at home, or should he go to a nursing home? Although people believe that placing their elderly family members into a nursing home is an easier option, I believe that it is the duty of the family to care for the dependent elderly at home instead of placing them into a nursing home. Doing so benefits the elderly, their family, and their community. It is the duty of the family to take care of the elderly in their dependent state. The Apostle Paul invokes our sense of duty to care for the dependent members of society in 1 Timothy 5. In verse 8, he declares, "Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." Paul reminds us of our familial duty to care for the elderly if they are unable to care for themselves. In other words, neglecting our responsibility to care for our elderly is sinful in the eyes of God. Home care's benefits to the elderly are numerous, and it extends to the family as well. With the elders in their own personal care, they can be reassured of the safety of their loved ones, and the elderly are able to live out the rest of their lives in comfort. The elderly play an important role in the family, and their presence should be treasured. Next, we must realize why nursing homes are an improper environment for the elderly. While residing in a nursing home, the elderly can be exposed to various forms of negligence and abuse as a result of an inefficiency bred by crushing workloads. Researchers Jason S. Olsberger and David Notneris found that 40% of nurses and aides admit to the maltreatment of residents. Inefficiency subsequently produces a decrease in the quality of care, causing the staff to forget their original duty of diligently tending to the patient's needs. While remaining at home, the elderly can play their role as the fountain of wisdom. They are given the opportunity to grow closer with their children and grandchildren, to pass along their values and traditions, and to live out the rest of their lives in the presence of their loved ones. The community greatly benefits from the presence of the elderly, and vice versa. Belonging to a community is essential for human development, and a diversity in age allows for treasured traditions to be passed on and for meaningful stories to be told in a communal, familiar setting. Despite the inherent benefits, there are concerns held by both the caregivers and the elderly receiving care. The elderly individual may prefer the environment of a nursing home over that of their families. The routine of a nursing home can serve as a comfort to the people residing there, as they are guaranteed food, exercise, and time to socialize. All the same, the elderly can receive that same comforting structure and attentiveness from a familiar face. Families, as opposed to nursing home staff who are paid to care, usually want to care for their elderly family members. The people who are paid to care for the elderly may only do so for the benefit of the company. The unbreakable bond of family trumps that of corporations designed to profit off of the infirmity of the elderly. After an 8-year-long battle with Alzheimer's, my grandfather passed away in the summer of 2015. Though life grew exponentially more difficult for my grandfather, my grandmother, and our family as a whole, I cherished every moment I made caring for him. Growing up with my grandfather allowed me to remember how such a remarkable man could be afflicted by such a horrible disease. Home care allowed that time to continue on for just a little longer, and it gave me the one thing I really wanted: more time with him. I believe the memories and lessons I took from caring for my grandparents are extremely valuable. I received the opportunity to grow up with the amazing people who raised my equally amazing mother, and later, me. I will forever treasure the time I spent with my grandmother and the time we spent in front of the TV yelling at the clueless characters of the soap operas because we obviously knew better than they did. And the time I spent with my grandfather laughing and running around until we were out of breath. Thank you.